The truth.
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 Welcome to Trusting the Truth with Samuel Tolley, where we view the world through the lens of Jesus Christ. We do not view Jesus Christ through the lens of the world. How you doing? This is Sam Tolley with Trusting the Truth. Today we have a Mordecai Mission panel discussion about victims of the COVID pandemic. In one sense, all of us were victims because, it shut the country down for over a year. Children didn't go to school. I remember seeing where they dumped sand in playgrounds where kids couldn't play. And frankly, I see victims right now because it seemed like there's hardly a day where I can go down the street, either walking or driving, and see somebody with a mask on. I see people driving in a car by themselves with masks on. And it's the craziest thing in the world to me. And I see people in stores and we knew even at the time of the COVID pandemic that the mask itself was insufficient. It's like you got a tennis net and you're shooting a water hose through it. I mean, the dadgum germ or whatever you want to call that thing, the virus was so small that the mask meant nothing. And then, of course, if you had I think it was an N95 mask or something, it might have been helpful for you if you can keep it in place. But, people walking around with cloth masks, and I would even have the stupid cloth mask, which I know did nothing, but I wore it because I'm in environments where they were determined that you have to have a mask. And the funniest thing to me was the idea when they decided to let us go to restaurants. And my wife and I would walk in a restaurant with a mask on, and they would tell us, okay, you need to keep your mask on until you get to your seat. So we get to a booth, and then they let us sit down, and then they tell us we could take our mask off. We could take our mask off as soon as we sat down, and they had this big piece of plexiglass between our booth and the booth next to us. And I would joke at her, and I would say, the virus doesn't go over the plexiglass, and it doesn't bother you as long as you're sitting down. But if you stand up and you're not eating, then the virus will get you. But other than that, we can sit down and we can do whatever we want to do, and there was no problem. So I thought it was a joke, but in all honesty, it's a serious situation that people went through a lot of hardship behind this mess. And I want to bring in Pastor Green first and let him expound on about some of these victims of this COVID virus. Go ahead, Pastor Green. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes. Well, during
We have a little delay on Pastor Green, or he's getting locked up or something. Yeah, I can hear you. I heard you. Anytime somebody says, "Can you hear me?" that's generally when you can hear them. You just can't hear them before or after that.
Yeah.
Go ahead and try it again.
Yeah. So with this pandemic, and I call it a pandemic because this was planned for years before they implemented it. And I had relatives, family members, two I wrote exemptions for that are new and were rejected. They were forced to take the shot. And I call it a shot because it's not even a vaccine. The CDC on their own website says it does not qualify to be a vaccine.
Okay. I can't hear you, Pastor. I don't know if you've. Okay, we're gonna have to we're going to have to get back to Pastor Green. Let me go to Terrence Adams. Go ahead, Terrence.
What was the question again, Sam? I'm sorry.
No, actually, I didn't have a general question other than talking about, the victims of this situation. I mean, I gave a somewhat, I would have think, humorous anecdote about the restaurant, but all of us have been victimized from this pandemic in one way or another. And of course, I just started off light. I mean, there's some horrific stuff to talk about.
Yeah. But you're right. Me and William were talking about it the other day, how the whole restaurant fiasco. I remember going out with my wife and kids, and how you had to wear a mask, and everybody's all hush hush, and you sit down and the mask comes off. I'm like, man, the virus only, flies along at a certain height. It's weird. All of the science they have behind this thing. It's funny. Some of the things are funny looking back on, but really, I think we're all victims in the sense that the devil made a joke out of all of us. He used fear, and that spirit of fear took a hold of the country, and a lot of crazy, stupid, senseless things happened. Like we say with the mask. I mean, I was barking about that forever and a day, and nobody wanted to listen. We're making cloth masks out of old T-shirts, all these things, and the science behind that, you rebreathe in your own exhaust. These viruses are getting captured in the cloth, and you're breathing it back in again. And it was all so foolish. But looking back on how it affected my children, with them having to Zoom on school, not every child is built for that or can adapt to that. I have a couple of kids now I think are still a little bit behind because of that. I mean, it took away a lot of skills you learn when you're little too. About we could talk about speech and how seeing someone talk affects how you learn how to speak. And when you can't see their face, the phonetics change. You want to talk about little children being afraid of their grandma. I might kill my grandma if I breathe on my grandma. What are the psychological effects of stuff like that? What about the people who had loved ones that were in the hospital who had to die alone, and they have to live with that for the rest of their lives? Their loved one dying by themselves. You had to watch, from outside the glass or not even see them at all. And who knows what happened to them? You'll never know what these people did to them. I mean, it's an atrocity what happened. I think if we go forward a few generations, they look back at what happened. It's going to be one of those things you read about in the history book. And you're like, wow, how did that happen? How did they let the Jews be slaughtered like that? How did America and its churches shut down? How do we let this fear grip an entire nation or an entire world? And we treat our loved ones like they're disease and like diseased dogs and just put them away. I mean, how does that happen? But here we are, and I think it goes back to the same old song. When you forget God and when you don't fear God, you begin to fear man. And the Bible says that the fear of man is a snare. And I think that's what happened to a lot of people. They were gripped with fear, and they were opening themselves up to any and everything. It was a joke. I mean, the whole 6 foot rule, I think that came from like a 6th grade child in school or a high school or something like that came up with some random number and they went with it. I mean, a lot of the stuff was just, laughable, but at the same time, deadly. And like I said, a lot of people suffered from it. I myself almost lost my job. I'm the father of 5 children at the time. I want to say 4 of them were still in the house. And I had to carry the weight of that decision. My job was telling us that we had to have the shot in order to be at work or we could get fired. And they finally kind of caved in and said you could have religious exemptions. They were being tight-fisted about that. My own church, the church that I was going to at the time, they told me they were not going to write a religious exemption. So my back was really up against the wall at the time. But I thank God for Pastor Green, who's on with us here tonight. He was able to write me a religious exemption. And the company held on to it for a while. They didn't want to do it. But I think after so many people refused to take the shot, and you realize I think it was there was rumors that there were about maybe 25 to 30% of the workforce that wasn't going to do it. They realized they couldn't function with that loss of workforce. I mean, it wasn't a majority of people, but it was enough to, hey, you guys need to back off this thing and give us a chance. I mean, our own union would not back us up on this. They totally took the side of the Democrats and the whole COVID vaccine and all that good stuff. So it was a trying time, but I can say that like the Bible says, all things work together for the good to them that love God and are called according to his purpose. I trusted God through that. And now I have some, some spiritual muscle. I know that I can trust God with it. That was a very, very trying time. Like I said, I had 4 kids, house payments, all that stuff going on, get job, get benefits. And I came to the point where I was willing to lose all that because I felt not just for my life, but my conscience. I could not take that thing. I don't think I could live on myself if I didn't. I'm not trying to heap guilt on anybody who did take the shot, but for me personally, I'd feel like a coward after that because I knew in my spirit what God was telling me not to do. And I wasn't even in the best of health then. I was a lot more overweight than I am now. So who knows what would have happened on top of getting COVID and having that shot. They could have put me in a respirator and who knows what would have happened. I thank God that I obeyed. And I think while, yes, there were a lot of victims, but for the people that did stand, I think a valuable lesson was learned. You know, it's like the scripture says, if you can't run with the foot soldiers at this point, what are you going to happen when the horsemen come? You know, what's going to happen when the horsemen come? I mean, that was a hard time, but if you read your Bible, things will get tougher. And we like to think that we're going to, you know, and we can, by the grace of God, get through the persecution. But if you cave it now, what are you going to cave to later? Now's the time to stand up. It's not something you do tomorrow. You got to stand in your faith today, daily. You got to die daily. And I think that was a moment for me that really clarified how much I trust in God. And I thank God for his grace. I couldn't trust him without him giving me grace to trust him. But I thank God for being a reliable source of for courage for me, for my faith, for my family. I mean, I could have caved and told my whole family to get it. I could have lost a child like some people did or lost my spouse. But I thank God for standing true to his word. I really thank God for that. So, yes, there were victims, but there are also some victories to be told out of that whole situation.
You know, Terrence, I have to say that was the one thing that crossed my mind during that time, because I was past raising children. I was no longer in a job. I was retired, so I wasn't subject to the scrutiny if the employer would have said you got to take that shot. And it dawned on me. And I thought about it. I said, what if I was, you know, raising a family and I had a house and I got a wife and I got these kids and they're telling me I need to take this thing. And I like to sit up and say, oh, I wouldn't have did it. But it pressed my thought process. And maybe it's a selfish thought, but I was thanking God that I wasn't pressured. I didn't have to take that chance. I didn't have to, or I shouldn't say take that chance. I didn't have to take that trust. you know better than me what I'm talking about. I didn't have to take that trust. I would like to think that I would, you know, no matter what's going to happen because and as time went on, and I'm seeing where I remember distinctively a nurse. I don't know what state it was in, but she did not want to take the chance. She did not want to take it, and they put so much pressure on her. She finally took it. And she ended up dead. So these things were real that they did to people. People died. You know, young people with myocarditis and pericarditis and all kinds of nonsense. You know, and then them trying to give it up to children as young as 6 months old.
Yeah,
and
crazy
women that is coming out now that Fauci even knew that probably by the time they take that second shot, it's going to be deadly. So I want to go to Bill and get your thoughts on some of the madness that we're talking about here, Bill.
I only wore one mask during that whole mess, and it was this one. Black motorcycle helmet, full face, and I even put down the dark face shield so they couldn't see my eyes just to aggravate them. So the entire COVID nightmare was the most massive coercion to control the entire population of this country, and it was massive. The entire media, the news media, everybody on the left was in on it. And I believe it was a test to see if they could get away with forcing a dictatorship on us. They did their absolute best to terrorize us into complying. When this first started out, they're showing videos of people just dropping dead in the streets. They said that, there's going to be bodies piled up in the roads, on and on and on. The fear factor went. And a lot of people ran to get those shots. But you know what? There was something suspicious about those shots from day one. First of all, it wasn't a vaccine. It was a concoction of chemicals. A vaccine is, a weakened or dead version of the virus that you inject, and the body responds by creating antibodies. It had nothing to do with that. And the fact that they wanted to give it to little children, to military age men, healthy people who were at very low, if any, risk from this virus, there was something suspicious about it. And we know now, looking back on the carnage that it caused, is that there was a plan to decimate military readiness. And when you throw Bill Gates into it, he and Fauci were partners in this, there's reason to believe that it was an attempt to literally decrease the world population. Bill Gates gave a TED talk several years before this virus hit, and I saw that where he said to the people, if we do a good job with these vaccines, we can reduce the world population by 10 to 15%. And I'm thinking, how in the world does a vaccine reduce the population except by killing people? But people sit there going, ooh, yeah, 10 to 15.
Or sterilizing them.
Or sterilizing them, yeah. I am convinced that Bill Gates and Fauci conspired to commit genocide. 1 million people died in this country. We had athletes, young men dropping dead on the football field. Something that you never see. Pathologists doing autopsies were sounding the alarm when doing autopsies on these people that dropped dead. They were pulling out huge blood clots from the major arteries where they were occluded, and they had never seen anything like that. And it was all tied to the vaccine. It was obvious for anybody with eyes to see, ears to hear. And my concern is that if we don't prosecute the people that did it the first time, they'll do it again. And we've already seen a couple of tries where they tried to start up the monkeypox is coming. Get ready. 2.0 is coming, but I guess the monkeypox only affected homosexuals, so people didn't care that much, and it wasn't much of a pandemic. It just kind of died a humiliating death. But the fact that Fauci is now being questioned and they're talking about prosecution does give me some hope that we might actually see some justice, but I don't trust anything that begins with a congressional hearing. How many times have we seen bad guys hauled before Congress for the congressional hearing, and they get asked tough questions and they get humiliated online, and people are going, yeah, you see, they really get, and then nothing happens.
After all, what difference does it make?
She should be in prison. She should have been in prison 20 years ago. Don't get me started on that rabbit trail. But, now I lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. I didn't
That's
mean to
okay.
do that.
Yeah, Hillary does that to me. But justice. If we don't prosecute these people, they will try it again. And whenever you see a congressional hearing with the stern, serious politicians grilling the bad guys, it's nothing but a dog and pony show to get those politicians reelected. So if there was a serious investigation into the criminality of COVID-19, the first we would know about it is when we see pictures of the people who were arrested at their arraignment standing before a judge for their criminal trial. So I have no confidence in the political machine, but the bright spot is the states are starting to take action. Here in Florida, the Attorney General is planning on prosecuting Fauci on state charges. And I consulted with an attorney just last Saturday, and he says, no, he says a federal pardon does not hold up in state court. All 50 states could prosecute these bums because they hurt people in all 50 states. That might be the saving grace. That might be the avenue through which we actually see some justice.
Well, we hope so. All right, Paul, what say you?
Well, is there anything left to say, my friend?
Oh,
I can go personal anecdote. I'm going to go smaller instead of big.
okay.
I just want to see if you guys remember before and concurrent with the masking, do you remember that we're expected to wear gloves as well? Rubber gloves? It didn't take because it was so involved. You had to wear the gloves because you don't want to be, your hand is touching virus perhaps, and then you're touching the cloth mask. And so the gloves were an important part until they weren't, because I think it was too much to ask the people to adhere to. So that went out the window.
The tyrants backed off.
Yes. I think, again, if they're testing to see what they can get away with and what they can't, they're going to be very arbitrary in what they try to impose and what they quietly let lapse. And I noticed that. Were you guys in states where the liquor stores were kept open even as the churches were closed?
Yep.
Yeah, down here in the South, we call those medicine.
And the strip joints.
Yeah. Now I'm
Morale.
hearing, did you guys hear the reason why they want to keep liquor stores open besides having a more compliant public?
No, I didn't hear it.
Taxes. They generate state tax. It's a revenue source. Now, you would think, the churches, which are tax exempt, right? Easy to close them down. Liquor stores, no, they want to keep the revenue going. You hadn't heard that before?
Hadn't heard
Okay,
that.
no. So why do they want the strip joints open? A lot of taxes in there too?
That's a
Where
good
the politicians go.
Bread
that
and
was
cir-
on my page. And
and circuses.
New Jersey and New York, both governors were really slammed after the fact for all the nursing homes that were allowed to have people with COVID. They brought them into the nursing homes so they wouldn't have any empty beds, even though they didn't have the capacity to quarantine them properly. So it ran rampant through nursing homes. And again, what do you think New Jersey and New York governors were thinking about? Their nursing home constituents wanted the beds filled. If you have them in hospitals, they're not getting money per bed. Something along the lines, again, of revenue, that it was financially driven, that kept, Bill, you have something?
I think there was something more malevolent than that. The governors of Michigan, Illinois, and I think New York, they signed orders forcing COVID patients into nursing homes. And I believe they did it specifically to drive up the death rate,
Yes.
to increase the fear,
Wow.
to increase the fear. Man, if that's not criminally negligent homicide.
And there's something else that they did to increase the death rate. I have a close friend, matter of fact, a close couple named Jose and Shirley Marquez. Now, Brother Marquez, he worked with me when I was in the Department of Correction, and when he retired, he took on a supervisory role in the hospital security. And we would talk about this often. When people died, everything was labeled COVID. They're still going to put COVID as a reason on your death certificate. And another thing we have to remember, when people were dying supposedly from the COVID, there were no autopsies done. People were being incinerated. They weren't allowing autopsies when this first happened. They might have allowed them later, but when this first happened, people were actually being burnt, cremated, but no autopsy given. And in the case of my friend's wife, Miss Shirley Marquez, she was a school teacher in New York. And rather than take that shot, they forced her to either take the shot or lose her job. And she took the higher road and she didn't take the shot, but she lost her job as a New York City school teacher. So, when we talk about, you hear the Democrats talking about, oh,
Froze up on us, Pastor.
I believe hospitals were being paid $20,000 to $30,000 for every death certificate that they put COVID down as the cause of death.
yes, they were.
Medical malpractice, hospital malpractice.
Well, it got to the point where people had to fight to get loved ones out of the hospital because they weren't being treated and the hospitals wanted money. Unfortunately, they were getting paid a lot of money for people that died. I had a friend that was sick right before this thing started. And he was in a hospital, and his wife used to come and visit him every day. Every day she was there. And then it got to the point where they start not allowing relatives into the hospital. So he died without his wife, being there. They contacted her and let her know where they think he's going. Oh, well, by the time she got there, he was gone. But they wouldn't let her be there anymore. And one of the good things about if a parent or a spouse is active in your health and visiting where you are being treated, that keeps the nurses and the orderlies on their toes. That keeps people from unfortunately, I mean, yes, I believe that there are many healthcare workers that love their jobs and care about people. But people are human, and there's also scandalous folks who don't give a rat's behind and just want to get paid and will abuse, the clients. But if you have relatives that are there constantly looking at you, making sure you don't get bed sores, making sure you're being taken care of, these people aren't gonna take you for granted. They're gonna protect their job by doing their job. But during this so-called pandemic, like you said, there was hardly no flu. The flu didn't exist that year.
Good point. Your good point. Yeah.
The flu was gone. It was just COVID. Everybody, you got Terrence. I don't know what it is, but something get a lot. It gets almost like the wind blowing.
I saw lightning behind him there. I think he has a thunderstorm going.
We're having a pretty big thunderstorm right now.
Oh,
so
we're
enjoying it.
I remember, and I may have the age wrong, but I could swear I remember seeing a news article where it said a 108-year-old woman died of COVID. Now I'm thinking, now come on. I mean, really. Hell, she's 108, she died. She's 108, she died.
There was a guy, COVID. Guy fell off a roof and broke his neck, and listed as COVID killed him. What? Because he had been exposed to COVID a few days before.
Yeah. And you put down COVID, cash money.
Cash money.
So my personal anecdote again applies. I was a school teacher during the lockdown, and I remember that health expert named Randy Weingarten, who was advising the administration on behalf of the teachers unions that no, we can't have kids go back to school. They're going to have asymptomatic spread, which the WHO admitted later on it's rare, if at all, asymptomatic spread. It was not a real threat. Anyone with 2 or more comorbidities, like over 60, and maybe diabetes, heavy obesity, whatever, they could work remotely, but they didn't have to shut down New Jersey schools for 2 years. But because of that, I was working remotely, and it was a joke. It's hard enough when you're in the room with the kids to keep them focused for more than 5-10 minutes, let alone when they're, in their own room and oftentimes absent, not even present. And then, I had to get tested. Fortunately, I was working in Philadelphia. When we went back, I had to get tested every week for COVID. So I didn't have to choose job or jab. My wife, though, and here's where it hits me personally. She's conservative as I am. She was as skeptical about this, fast rush. This, what was it called? Getting the vaccine fast tracked or whatever that was, right?
Operation Warp Speed.
Warp Speed.
Yeah, emergency use authorization.
Yeah. Which
no testing needed.
Yeah, Trump was trusting the $500,000 man, the highest paid public servant, on that. But she had has a mom, 93 years old back then in her late 80s, that she didn't want to have to go through the process and produce a vaccine passport in case she had to rush to Central America to visit her mom. So she gave in. She got the jab. And I want to live our golden years out with both of us, robust and vital. And when she's got symptoms, ringing in the ear, I'm hearing that the vaccine mess with people's taste, mess with their ears, mess with all their senses. I mean, there's so many different things. I finally got her to take the, you see the detox program for people who got the jab and have all that spike protein running around, the spike detox. I got that as an extra gift for her birthday. And she was like, what? What's this? You better have something else besides this. But I don't want the fact that she felt pressured. She never did have to have that emergency trip because her mom's living though to 108, but she felt compelled to have that jab. My life mate, flesh of my flesh, right? I have to be concerned if something's going to come up and show up latent and take her out because she went with the jab and the booster. And that pisses me off. Just the thought that I have to even be concerned about that. Thank God we have faith and we've got God. God is what kept me from having to get the jab through all this. And my faith in God is the highest authority. Like Terrence, you said it so beautifully. I'm not going to have the fear of man dictate what I do. So, I just thank God that he was there and we had the wisdom. But again, my anecdote is my wife. The last thing I'll say is in my state, Governor Murphy, they talked about as if we were carrying a loaded weapon if we were unvaxxed, that we were going to be. And in a blue state like New Jersey, they made it sound like you were going to be a mass murderer if you refused the jab. And then BLM, Black Lives Matter, and all the riots and all that fuss and muss. He was on the street, Murphy, leading a group of Black Lives Matter, 5,000 people on the streets without a mask at a time where everyone else was expected to wear a mask. Because that protest had a higher importance than the prevent mass murder mandate on the rest of us. And I will never forget the double standard that they kept to throughout that.
I think you got it wrong. The virus does not mess with protesters. The virus to a protester the virus doesn't go there. In fact, the virus changes its mind because when Trump was in office, Kamala Harris and them said that I would never take that vaccine, that Trump vaccine. And as soon as Joe got 81 million votes, all the Democrats were demanding that everybody takes that very same vaccine that they said a month or so earlier that they would never take because of the Trump vaccine.
Their hypocrisy knows no bounds.
That's crazy. I mean, that's why it's so good for us to sit and talk about this. Because so many things, so many memories are being dredged back up. I don't know if you guys remember the cycle threshold value when they were testing for COVID. Those kits, they would test it so stringently. It's almost like they were looking for a COVID vaccine. There's a certain cycle threshold value you're supposed to test that, but they went like 3 or 4 times deeper. So everything was so magnified, you couldn't help but find some kind of COVID in your system because COVID-19 was just a variation of prior COVIDs and other COVIDs and all kinds of different stuff. But so they were deliberately trying to find COVID in everybody. I remember we were talking to a pastor, I think it was yesterday, earlier this week, where he said he had a church member who, because they had testing at the church, he got tested, I think, on a Friday, and his test came back clean. He was cleared, didn't have COVID. He died on a Saturday. And then when they gave his cause of death, guess what they said it was? It was COVID. Even though he had tested clean, he didn't have COVID the day before. But now after he died, he had COVID. There's just so many things like that happen as we're talking and starting to come back to me. I mean, it's crazy some of the stuff we tolerate. And it's like you sit back, you're watching people in church, you're watching these doctors who are supposed to be professionals and intelligent, falling for this, and not only falling for it, but endorsing it and putting their name behind it. So I think when you think about victims, another victim of it is essentially anybody who goes to the doctor. Every time I go to the doctor, I'm questioning his morality, his intelligence. I don't trust you now. I don't. I mean, are you part of the system? Because it's no longer I realized it's no longer personal health care that you're getting. They're going by a protocol now.
Yeah.
They're not treating the patient. They're treating you as a business partner. You pay for insurance. This is what you're going to get, and this is what the insurance tells me that I can give
Hmm.
you. Everybody's different. Everybody's body reacts different to a lot of different things, but it's not like that anymore. So I mean, when I go to the doctor, I'm very skeptical. I'm asking questions. I almost want to give them a litmus test at this point. Like,
Terrence,
here we are.
this is big because the only doctors that I trusted during that time were the only ones who did not sell out and become affiliated with a hospital that would try to dictate how they treat their patients. They were the only ones who were getting ivermectin out there in the midst of it being called a horse
Horse paste.
dewormer. Right.
Yeah.
Uh,
They were rare. And what's the other shot? Because I got it. Monoclonal antibodies. I was
Yes.
blessed to have gotten a doctor that allowed me to have that instead of the COVID vaccine.
Yes.
We didn't even have a discussion. I think she must have read me or something and knew that. Probably because I hadn't had the COVID shot at that time. She's like, I'm not going to get into a fight with this guy. I'll give him monoclonal antibodies, which,
Yeah.
if I remember right at that time, was rare to get. They were really pushing the COVID vaccines when I had it.
You know, before
Thank
they,
God for it.
before they came out with that or understood about ivermectin, I had met this person recently, a doctor that told me that she was giving people the hydroxychloroquine, but she was keeping it under
Right.
the, keeping it low
Hmm.
as far as,
Mhm.
and she said she lost nobody. None of her patients ended up dead or in the hospital because of the treatment, because she jumped on it early. And it's so sad. Like Paul was saying yesterday, they try to shame you. They try to make you feel as that you were less than human, or like when Terrence, I'm like, you're gonna kill grandma or something if you don't take this thing. And I was looking at the mental pressure they put on people. See, for me, that would have never bothered me. What Terrence had to go through would have bothered me. I deal with family. As far as somebody just trying to shame me, that I look at stuff like that as one of the benefits of growing up poor. Because when you grow up poor and you get talked about like a dog when you're a kid, you got a choice to either survive and take it and thrive through it, or just crumble and burn. And I survived and took it, and so I got to the point where you talk about me, it doesn't matter. I ain't, I don't care. But yeah, but a lot of people can't handle it. A lot of people can't handle not being accepted by the group. I want to go to Pastor Green after I make this one statement. I'll never forget my older sister who just passed in April. She was having her 70th birthday party, and when we went to the party, her kids all put together for her. They said that everybody that had the vaccine did not have to wear a mask, but for those that didn't have the vaccine, you need to wear a mask. So I came to the party, my wife at the time and we came and we had to wear a mask. And it always struck me, number one, if you're already vaccinated, what are you worried about? Why am I a problem? And number two, then they said when it was time to eat, well, you could take your mask off and eat. I guess the virus respects private parties as well. But my attitude was, no, I'm not hungry. I'll wait till later on when I get, I'm thinking about to the hotel. Because to me, it was stupid. If I'm not safe enough to walk around without this thing on my face now, how am I going to be safe when all of a sudden there's food in front of me? All right, Pastor Green, let's see what you got to say.
Well, when you look back, there were three sayings that were created during this whole pandemic. One was rabbit holes. Okay, we didn't used to say that before, unless we was talking about Alice in Wonderland. And another one that they created was conspiracy theories. If you had common sense and you expressed it, you were considered a conspiracy theorist. And the other term I think was so telling that flew over people's heads that Fauci was saying, he used the term herd immunity. So they were saying that we supposed to be a bunch of dumb animals and just go along with the crowd. And see, um, the travesty is a lot of people gave into this name calling, and just like how we just said, and how you just expressed it, people couldn't take being not being called. People couldn't take being called names. So they did it out of fear. They did it out of intimidation. But even when you saw the red flags, people still went and did it anyway. Now, what red flag example can I point to? You look at how they tried to convince black people to take this. And so who was the guinea pig they used? Hank Aaron. And I think Hank Aaron died 1 or 2 days after he got that shot.
I think so too.
Marvin Hagler. You see? So, and
Oh, Marvin died after taking the shot?
Marvin Hagler died after taking that shot. As a matter of fact, if you remember, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but the first person they gave the shot to, she was a nurse, and as soon as she took it, she passed out. So when I saw that, I was like, nah, I ain't messing with this. I don't know.
I remember that. Yep.
Yeah.
But, it was like one thing we learned through this experience is that when you talk about common sense is not common in our society today. And another example I would use to express that is that this whole thing with this whole pandemic, people who were forced to take it, and I say forced, it wasn't an option. Why don't you stand up for your constitutional rights then? You see these crazy people now fighting for this and fighting over that, but people won't even fight for their lives. And the last thing I want to point to, I believe this MMR vaccine, I think it affects the thinking of people. And what basis can I say that? Think about 2 other situations we experienced. When you had the crack epidemic, we know that people who ingested crack, their behaviors changed. But where did crack come from? No one has the answer. There was another situation where, you had people who were ingesting these bath salts. And that caused people to do cannibalistic things. Where did that come from? So I look at people now who I believe took this vaccine, these MMR vaccines, I believe their minds are being controlled because of the crazy things they're doing, the crazy things they're expressing.
There's a spiritual part of it, Pastor. Yeah. Drugs are an open door to demon influence and possession. Yes. And demonism changes the way people think and act.
Exactly. And so that's why I put the crack epidemic, the bath salts, and COVID as a form of satanic activity. And the travesty is that you still have churches who are having so-called healing lines, and I'm not against healing, but how are you going to call yourself having a healing line you wearing a mask? It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. So, it seems like people still haven't learned, but we have to keep pressing this issue because we have to demand accountability. Because I don't want to ever hear anything about the Holocaust, even though it was terrible. But I don't want to hear anything about the Holocaust until Bill Gates and Dr. Fauci are brought to justice. Because yes, 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust, but you had 15 million people. Let that sink in. 15 million people and counting who were killed. So we need to demand and keep this conversation going until we see somebody in prison and handcuffed.
Well, like I said, I don't know if you guys know, I think some of Fauci's emails just came out where he's admitting that after that second dose, a bunch of pregnant women could miscarriage. I mean,
they lied about it.
Yeah, admitted that way back then when they were forced, when they were pushing this thing.
Yeah.
And they were telling everybody that it's safe. Now you normally never hear about people asking pregnant women to take anything.
Yes.
When my wives were pregnant, they didn't even take aspirin. They didn't take, nothing. You're trying to keep that body pure because it's not just going into them, it's going into that child. And these people were pushing this COVID vaccine on pregnant women, on infants, on healthy teenagers. Like I said, on the military, where many people quit or got put out of the service because they refused to take that experimental thing. And it's amazing. Also, when Trump was in office, and he was trying to, and he was the one that started that warp speed thing, but he did also say his attitude was whatever is going to help people work. And then he heard that about the hydroxychloroquine. I know I might be saying it wrong. And the media shut him down. They talked about him like a dog and said that he wanted to shoot people up with bleach and stuff. But the fact of it is there was this law that if there is any drug that is viable against some kind of illness, that this emergency authorization, which is what they use to get the shot out, be null and void. And so they had to shut that down so they can push out that drug on people, so they can push out them jabs on people. Other than that, they could have used the hydroxychloroquine and then also the ivermectin, and which both of them were safe and would have helped people. People did not need to die from the COVID or from the shot. But these things were kept from the public. And going back to what Terrence said earlier, I used to trust the medical field. Actually, I remember a long time ago, a fellow I knew used to tell me that the pharmaceutical companies were, they were just about trying to make money. They didn't care about us getting health, being well. And I thought he was stupid. I don't think that anymore. And I used to think that all the doctors were always thinking about my health. I don't think that anymore. I believe that there are some doctors that think about my health, but I think there's also some doctors just go along to get along, or some doctors are told this is what you do, and they take it. Just like that remdesivir or whatever that mess was that they were, Fauci was saying is a treatment for COVID, but in fact, it would kill your kidneys. I remember reading about a guy that needed a kidney transplant, or a woman, and they didn't want the person to get it until they took the drug that would kill your kidneys. And a guy in Canada died because he would not take the drug. And then when he died, this was reason his wife, they asked his wife, can they take his organs? So now my attitude about the medical field is Samuel Tolley has to be his number one advocate. I got to live in this body. No matter what some doctor offered me, no matter what some medical professional says, I'm the one that's got to live here. So I got to make the decisions. Yeah, my doctor was trying to ask me back then, you can take the vaccine, you want to take the shot? No, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not taking the statins anymore. I'm not taking none of this crap. Matter of fact, they got me to the point, I won't take the shingles. I won't take any of this crap because I don't trust these people. I don't see, they hurt the medical profession, hurt themselves by, number one, going along to get along, and number two, not standing up to the nonsense when a lot of them knew, no, this stuff, like people like Dr. McCullough took the stand. People like Dr. Zelensky that died a couple of years ago, they took a stand. When these people stand up and take a stand, they say, no, we're not going to hurt people. No, this stuff is dangerous. Or Dr. Emmanuel, where they tried to say that she was a witch doctor or something.
Yeah.
These people took a stand for what's right. And so I have to recognize that everybody that put on a white coat isn't looking after me. Some people are just looking after their pocket.
And see, that's another sad aspect of it too, because there may be some good medicine out there, but because people are so paranoid and self conscious about it now, they may not take that medicine, and they may lose their life or lose quality of life because they're afraid to take this stuff. Because people have been misused and abused. I mean, fool me once, I'm not coming back to be fooled again. And you may have a good cure on your side this time, but now I got to question you because you sold out. I mean, that's another victim to think about. So now I recommend when people go in, pray, pray and seek God. This is the temple of the Holy Ghost we're talking about. Treat it with care and pray. And if you don't have peace about the procedure or the medicine, pray about it. Pray about it. Don't be pressured. Don't operate out of fear. That's one thing I learned about COVID is we cannot operate out of fear. Be cautious, yes. Be prudent, yes, but you cannot operate out of fear. God did not give us a spirit of fear. We can't do that again. We just can't.
Hey, Sam, I want to add that while we were talking about like remdesivir, which in my circle where I seek news, they said that the nurses knew about remdesivir and they nicknamed it "Run, Death is Near." That's what they called remdesivir.
Wow.
My friend Greg Quinlan, an ex-gay who was a nurse at the time of AIDS, said remdesivir is what killed off many of the AIDS patients. Remdesivir under Dr. Fauci then you call him Dr. Death, is the same remdesivir that was shutting down kidneys during COVID. And yet, if you look it up online, did remdesivir, kill AIDS patients? It still has the top left-leaning, brainwashing propaganda that no, it's all false. Don't believe. So the misinformation, Sam, is still heavy out there. People got to dig below the first 10 Google search returns. They got to dig a little deeper to find truth.
Yeah.
I hope people listening to this listen to that first and foremost. Be skeptical. That's what following the science is. Science, I said this the last time, is about being skeptical. Everyone says one thing. It only takes one person who finds something different out for all that to go out the window. That the sun doesn't revolve around the earth. In fact, Galileo found that the earth revolves around the sun. It only took one person to be right in science. So throw out the propaganda, throw out the so-called consensus. A lot of these people are sold out now, and it is about the money. Even a lot of the science and a lot of the studies, because of peer review, if it doesn't comport, because government is funding a lot of this research, if it doesn't comport with the political stance of government, you ain't going to get funding. Right. So yes, you're going to put out a lot of crap for the carrot, for the money.
And by the way, Galileo caught hell behind that.
He did.
When he said that the earth, rotated around the sun instead of the sun going around the earth.
Right.
And
Sam, I want to interject something because I remember one of the questions that was asked of Fauci, would he apologize? Would he just turn around and apologize? And of course he pleaded the fifth. But when you talk about propaganda and people need to apologize, that's the mainstream media. I saw that interview, I won't even call it an interview, but I saw that debate between Dana Bash and RFK.
Yes.
And she had the audacity to say there are reports that state, studies that state over 200,000 people died because they didn't get the vaccine. How can something that is designed to kill? First of all, COVID was a virus that was created to kill people. It was created. It didn't manifest itself. It didn't, come about through no, what's the word I'm saying, evolution, nothing like that. Didn't come from the wet market. They created this virus specifically to kill people. So if this was created to kill people, then what vaccine can you create to stop it? The same people who created the death are the same people who are going to cure it? That doesn't make no sense. And so when Dana Bash told RFK, there's a study to show that so many people were saved by the vaccine. And RFK said, you don't know what you're talking about. Show me one report. He didn't ask for dozens. He said, show me one report, one study that can prove the death shot saved people. And she couldn't do it. But yet, the media does not apologize for spreading this nonsense. They're still trying to justify it. They're still trying to talk up. They're still trying to talk support for Fauci.
Mhm.
And you know, when you think about Fauci and you think about Bill Gates and you think about the pharmaceuticals, these are the people that control social media. Because any mainstream news agency, you'll see who their sponsors are. Pfizer or some other pharmaceutical company. Bill Gates has ownership, lock and stock of a lot of these mainstream media outlets. So you can't, not only can't you trust doctors anymore, you can't even trust the media. And this is why we just got to trust God.
Yeah, the mainstream, the pharmaceuticals, I believe, are the largest advertisers on television right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so if the pharmaceuticals are the largest advertisers and they're advertising, spending advertising dollars on news sources, you can bet your sweet bippy that there's a bunch of news sources that are not going to say things against the pharmaceuticals, just like I showed in a video, I believe it was last week, where this lady that worked for a news company, they wanted her to talk against ivermectin, and she went and changed the script because she found out that they kept out the pertinent information, that it was a Nobel Peace Prize winning drug, that it was safe, that it was effective, but they didn't want that information out in the public because of the pharmaceutical company. But nevertheless, so therefore she refused to do it. She refused to say it because she has to stand up. She said she got one God that she has to support. She's not going to put something lie out there or a lie by omission, which deceives people, because all of us, and we're getting ready to sign off now, so I'm not going to be able to bring anybody back on, but all of us have experienced during that pandemic where people would look at us like we had three heads because we wouldn't take the shot, where they thought that we were crazy. Or some thought we were going to end up dead, that we were going to kill over and die because we didn't take it. But what they failed to understand was that we took the time to do the research. We took the time to investigate not just the shot, but the alternatives and the people and everything. It's not that we didn't care. In fact, we cared more. We cared so much that even, and I'll tell people this, and I told them that even if Trump would have got reelected, I still wasn't taking that shot. It had nothing to do with him. It had to do with what I thought was best for me. You know, because like I said, Sam has got this body is all I got until the Lord sends me home. This is the temple that I got to work with. You know, and yes, I believe there's some people who are looking after our interests that want to help, and there's some people that don't. And unfortunately, or maybe I should say fortunately instead of unfortunately, fortunately, this whole pandemic thing brought us to a point where we can see that everyone in the medical field and everyone in the news field, and of course, we already knew everybody in the political field didn't necessarily care about us. Mm-mm. So now we've learned, or you should learn, to care about ourselves. So this is going to end this episode of Trusting the Truth. This Mordecai Mission Edition regarding COVID and the victims, but we're not done yet. There's so much more to peel away on this thing. But for now, this is Sam Tolley saying, I'm out.